The flashing lights hit your rearview mirror. Your heart rate jumps. You glance at your speedometer, then instinctively you remember something else. There's a firearm in the car. Maybe it's on your hip. Maybe it's in the center console. Maybe it's locked in a case in the back seat. Now everything feels heavier. So let me ask you this right up front. If an officer walks up to your window during a traffic stop, can they legally take your gun, even if you did nothing wrong? I want you to answer that in the comments before we go further. Yes or no? And tell me what state you're in, because the real answer is not as simple as most people think, and misunderstanding this can turn a routine stop into something far more serious. Let's slow this down and break it apart the way a court would. First, understand something fundamental. A traffic stop is considered a temporary detention under the Fourth Amendment. It's not a full arrest, but it is a lawful seizure. That means officers have certain authority to control the scene for their safety. Officer safety is the key phrase here. The Supreme Court has repeatedly recognized that traffic stops are inherently dangerous situations for police. Because of that, officers are allowed to take reasonable steps to ensure their safety during the encounter. That includes ordering occupants out of the vehicle. It can include conducting a limited pat-down if they have reasonable suspicion you're armed and dangerous. Notice those words carefully. Armed and dangerous, not just armed. In many states, being armed legally does not automatically make you dangerous. But here's the reality. During a traffic stop, courts often give officers leeway to temporarily secure a firearm if they believe it's necessary for safety. So yes, in many circumstances, police can temporarily take your gun during a traffic stop. But that doesn't mean they can automatically keep it. And it doesn't mean they can search your entire vehicle without cause. Let's talk about the difference between temporary disarmament and seizure as evidence. Temporary disarmament usually means the officer removes the firearm during the stop, unloads it, and holds it until the stop is completed. If everything checks out, valid permit, no warrants, lawful possession, the firearm is typically returned before you leave. This is not automatically a violation of your rights. Courts have upheld temporary securing of weapons during lawful stops when it's reasonably related to officer safety. But here's where things get more complicated. If the officer develops probable cause that a crime is being committed, for example, unlawful carry, possession by a prohibited person, or the firearm is stolen, then the weapon can be seized as evidence. That's no longer a temporary safety measure. That's part of a criminal investigation. Now let's talk about duty to inform laws, because this is where people make mistakes. Some states require you to immediately inform an officer that you're carrying a firearm during a traffic stop. Other states only require you to disclose if asked. Some have no duty to inform at all. If you are in a duty to inform state and you fail to notify, that alone can result in a citation or even arrest, depending on the statute. And here's something critical. Even in states without a duty to inform, if an officer asks you directly whether you have weapons, lying is a terrible idea. That can escalate the situation quickly and potentially lead to additional charges. So what should you actually do? If you are legally carrying and your state requires disclosure, calmly inform the officer early in the stop. Keep your hands visible. Do not reach toward the firearm. Tell them where it is. Follow instructions. If your state does not require disclosure, many attorneys still recommend voluntary, calm notification to avoid surprises. An officer discovering a gun unexpectedly during a stop can create tension that didn't need to exist. Now let's address a common myth. Some people believe that if they are legally carrying, an officer has no right to touch their firearm. That's simply not how courts have interpreted officer safety authority. Judges generally balance your Second Amendment rights against officer safety concerns during a lawful detention. As long as the officer's actions are reasonable and limited in scope, temporary disarmament is often upheld. But there are limits. An officer cannot extend a traffic stop indefinitely just because you have a firearm. The stop must remain reasonably related to the reason for the initial detention, like speeding or a broken taillight, unless new facts create reasonable suspicion or probable cause of another crime. If the stop drags on purely because you're armed legally, that can raise constitutional issues. Now, let's talk about vehicle searches. Having a firearm in your car does not automatically give police the right to search your vehicle. They still need consent, probable cause, or another recognized exception to the warrant requirement. If an officer asks, "Do you mind if I search your vehicle?" you have the right to say no, calmly and respectfully. Refusing consent is not probable cause. However, if the firearm is in plain view or if there's probable cause tied to other factors, like the smell of illegal substances, that changes the analysis. Here's another situation that trips people up. What if you're carrying under a permit from another state? Reciprocity matters. If your permit is not recognized in the state where the stop occurs, you could be considered unlawfully carrying. In that situation, the firearm may be seized, and you could face charges. Travelers need to understand that gun laws do not magically follow you across state lines. Now let's discuss what happens after the stop. If the officer temporarily secures your firearm and everything is lawful, they should return it before you leave. Sometimes it may be unloaded or placed in the trunk for safety reasons. That can vary by department policy. If the firearm is seized as evidence, you may need to go through a formal process to recover it, even if charges are later dropped. That can involve court orders, background checks, and administrative procedures. It's rarely instant. There's also the issue of prohibited persons. If you are legally prohibited from possessing a firearm, for example due to a felony conviction or certain restraining orders, the situation becomes much more serious. The traffic stop could turn into an arrest for unlawful possession, and let's not ignore how demeanor affects outcomes. If you panic, argue aggressively, or reach suddenly toward the glove box without explanation, you increase the risk of escalation. Traffic stops are tense for officers. They don't know you. They don't know your intentions. Calm communication goes a long way. Now, I want you to think about something beyond the legal theory. Even if the officer is legally allowed to temporarily take your gun, how you respond can determine whether the stop ends in 10 minutes or spirals into something far worse. You have rights. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to refuse consent to a search. You have the right to carry legally if state law allows it. But you also have to understand the environment you're in. A roadside stop is not a courtroom debate. It's a dynamic situation where safety concerns dominate. So let's circle back to the main question. Can police take your gun during a traffic stop? In many situations, yes, temporarily, if it's reasonably related to officer safety during a lawful stop. Can they automatically keep it? Not unless there's legal justification like evidence of a crime. Can they search your whole car just because you're armed? No, not without consent, probable cause, or another exception. And here's the bigger takeaway. If you choose to carry, you are choosing to operate in a legally sensitive space. Knowing your state's duty to inform laws, reciprocity rules, and vehicle carry regulations isn't optional. It's essential. Because when those red and blue lights appear behind you, that's not the moment to wonder what the law says. It's the moment your preparation either protects you or fails you. So tell me, does your state require you to inform during a stop? And if an officer asked to secure your firearm temporarily, how would you handle it?